Hey, everybody at Community. It's good to not see, well, I can't see you really, but it's good to be here with you. I am sitting in the breakfast nook of my house, and the feral cat is just about ready to jump up at the window and, hello, Goldie, and beg for some food, but she's going to have to wait. Looking out the back, I have two giant live oak trees and about 25 different kind of flowers. But you've heard me talk about this sylvan property that I live in, and it's wonderful. So today I'm going to talk about a faith of your own. And I remember when I started in the ministry, there was a kind of a rule about the fact you never talked about yourself. You always talked about religion, not you. And a long time, I was dissuaded about that and became convinced that if I'm not involved in what I'm talking about, it does not have any humanity. So this is a faith of your own, and there's going to be snippets when I'm talking about my own and my story. But I hope this applies to everybody and gives you some food to think about. As you know, this is based on the free and responsible search for meaning and truth, the seventh of the axioms of the UUs. So here we go. First, I want to talk about the basics. When we're trying to find a faith of our own, we start out somewhere. And a lot of us started out by inheriting a faith. We grew up in a family, maybe it wasn't a religious family, but we inherited, non-religion. I grew up in a culture which was as waspy as you can get. I did not know any people who weren't white. There was the only diversity in the neighborhood was that we had Eastern European immigrants, and they were unkindly known as the hunkies, which is a slang for Hungarian, but it was meant to include all the Eastern Europeans. And I remember when I came of age, when I had an interest in girls, my dad always warned me about the Eastern European women. And as you know now, for 17 months, I've been married to one of them, Elaine. We weren't Anglo-Saxon, but we were Scot and German. And a little hidden part of the family history was my grandfather on my mother's side's last name was Gross. And I had done some research, and I'm almost certain that he was an immigrant from Germany, where gross is a term, but it was very likely that they were Jewish. And when they got to America, they did what a lot of immigrants do, assimilate to the culture, and they turned out to be Lutheran. And we were Protestant, WASP Protestant, but we didn't go to church. I was sent to Sunday school. And that's where my religious upbringing came along, and my ideas and values, what's good, what's bad, what's true, what's false, what God's like, what's Jesus like, and all the rest of it. I grew up being what we would call today a fundamentalist, Bible-believing, Catholic-hating. No, that's not a joke. And witnessing. And one of the people that we would witness to was Unitarians and Universalists, because they were lost. So that's all kind of, it sounds silly, but here I am at 78 years old. I'm a little older than I was then. And how I would identify myself is nothing like anything that I grew up with. I am not far from what you guys would call a Christian Unitarian Universalist. And that's a term I learned at this congregation with you. So that's the beginning. We all begin somewhere. And then we get to junior high school. And if you've gone to elementary schools, and then there are other elementary schools that come in at 7th grade, there's all these new kids. And then you get to high school. And happily, I got to college. Most of the students in my high school did not go to college. It was a very low-brow community that I grew up in. And I began to have new experiences at the University of Pittsburgh. I met people who were different. I mean, I remember early on, we were sitting at lunch at the table in the engineering school where I was in chemical engineering. And we were going around saying where we went to church. And I said, I'm Baptist. And these two guys started laughing. And they said, you're kidding. I said, no. He said, you're white. I said, what? He said, I've never met a Baptist that wasn't of color. And I thought to myself, holy cow. So anyhow, I began to have experiences. I began to learn about other ways of thinking. And as a part of my search, I was free to discover and look. And then I went to New Jersey, which was like, after I graduated from college, that was like a new world. And I met a non-practicing Irish Catholic guy, and we became roommates for about a year. And we were both pursuing the meaning of life. And, what is it you want to do and what is it you should do, where you can kind of be at peace with yourself and be happy about your work and your life and all this kind of stuff. George, by the way, my Irish friend, his last name was O'Sheridan, very Irish, and his whole family was very Catholic, except he was non-practicing. George ended up being a Southern Baptist missionary, and he came out when he was about 50 years old, and he was one of the most inspirational people I ever met. Give you an illustration. There's some political things going on in the country now. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the first time I voted, George talked me into voting for the socialist candidate for president of the United States. And my parents both voted for George Wallace in the presidential thing of that time. Okay. So I'm starting to think about myself, and you have to come of age to do that. Because you might be thinking things that your family doesn't approve of, and that's one of the warnings, I would say, about thinking for yourself and finding a faith of your own. You might find yourself in real conflict with friends and family, and I can tell you, there are today, and for the last 30 or 40 years, there are people in my wider family who would rather not have me around to talk about politics or religion. Now, they don't talk about sex either, but that, So I started thinking, and I started having experiences with other people, and my mind began to open, and my heart did not really open at that point, the way I felt toward them, because they were different. And if they weren't like us born again Christians, they were going to hell and all that story, which But I got turned around on that one, but I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, you began to think, began to use your reason. There were some truths that were self-evident. There were some axioms you lived out of. let's see, what were some of the axioms? People from West Virginia intermarried their cousins. That was a true belief. People from the South were not only racist, but they were stupid and they didn't speak good English. I mean, I just grew up in this mess of, oh, people from Ohio. It's next door from Western Pennsylvania. We despised them. If you were across the Ohio River, it was a strange world. And I'm beginning to have all these experiences with other people and other people's ideas. And what was I looking for? Well, I was looking to convert everybody at that point because, we had an infallible Bible that you could just read straight out. What it said was what it meant. It was the truth. And if somebody else didn't go along with that, well, they were just out of luck. They were going to burn in hell for eternity. The cat's still over here listening. I might have to include the cat. Okay, what was I looking for? I thought I was just looking to be absolutely certain about the truth. I was a pointy-headed person. I wasn't a professor back in those days. I'm an engineer. Science was, logical, based on fact. And that's what I was interested in. Then when I was 24, something happened. I came down with stage 4 B-cell lymphoma. And I almost died. And that sort of knocked my mental thinking about. I mean, how do you deal with something like this when you're 24? And especially when you've given yourself to God. And God will take care of you. One of the songs we used to sing. So I began to realize that the goal of meaning and truth has to be tied with being at peace with yourself and others. The Jews call it shalom. I wonder how many of you know that Irene is based on the Irene from the Greek, which means to be at peace. And to be at peace in two ways. To have peace of mind, where you're satisfied with your understanding of yourself, the way the world works, the way the world goes, and you're not angry at everybody and everything and at yourself, to be at peace in your life. And then I would say that has to do with your head, but more important is to be at peace in your heart. There is a lot of anxiety. I love the fact that the German word Angst is now in our vocabulary because there's anxiety. And boy, today's generation, I'm like all these old people. I'm glad we're not growing up today, kind of thing. But there's a lot of unhappiness, and that's one of the goals. You want to have peace of mind and peace of heart. Peace with yourself. Paul Tillich's sermon, You Are Accepted. Look it up. It is one of the best things to get you to think, hey, I'm okay, regardless of the fact that I'm screwed up in some ways. Peace with others. They're not out to get you. You shouldn't fear them. Peace with nature. And peace with the cosmos, the divinity, however you view that. So having peace, I think, is the goal. Okay. If you're searching for a faith of your own, that seems to me to be some outcomes. Peace of mind, peace of heart, peace with others. Even though there's conflict, there's always conflict. Read Reinhold Niebuhr on this. He's one of the most influential thinkers and very readable about we live in a mixed world. It's not going to be perfect all the time. So then there are these things to consider. Some of these are caveats, and others of them are just considerations. There are 4 of them. I put this as number 1 because I used to think that we held the truth, and it is the truth, and there's no changing the truth, and that's the way it is. We're fallible. We are fallible. And no one else is fallible or infallible. There is no religious guru, pope. I mean, that's where the word infallibility comes, generally speaking, from some religious person. And it could be just somebody on TV who maybe hasn't gone to college or anything, but you think they're infallible. There's a guy named Joel, I won't go into that, from Texas, who people really say whatever he says is the truth, blah, 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 blah. And there's no books that are infallible. Well, now that got me into a lot of trouble with my own people and my religious past. To say that a book is infallible is just a falsehood. And I could go into that, but there's no person, there's no book. It's not you. So you have to be cautious about what appears to be absolute truth and just step back and say, it could be. You got to decide about ways you're going to live and what you're going to think. But always consider it could be false, it could be wrong. Humility. Humility is a learned thing. I was not a humble person. When I graduated from college, I graduated magna cum laude. I got the highest paying salary of anybody in my class. I went to work for Exxon. I went out and in 2 months, I bought a brand new car, cash. I was rolling in dough. And had an absolute faith that was nothing could change. And you got to be cautious about all this kind of thought. Big-headed people, narcissism, it's real and it's deadly with regard to being in peace, and especially peace with others. Humility. Well, cancer got me humble. Like that's period. And as some of you will remember, 36 years after I recovered from cancer at age 24, I came down with it at age 58 and had to have a bone marrow transplant in Daytona Beach. And that was 20 years ago. And it has always kept me knowing I am mortal, and no matter what I have or what I know, humility is something that you have to keep. All right, you can't do this all alone. Some people think you can do this all alone. You can find a faith of your own. The idea of beloved community, which is a part of your tradition and almost my tradition, is important. You can go it alone, but going together, searching together, talking together, experiencing together, having mutual respect for people who are in the search with you is something that's, I think, vitally, vitally important. And then what else can I say? there's an old song. Is it by the Drifters? Searching every which way, yeah, yeah. Da, da, da. Now, this guy's searching for a woman. I'm just using the idea that the search is something that continues. That does it get you to where everything is clear and everything? Look, I'm a theologian. I have less theology now than I did when I was 25 years old. I'm less certain about things. I mean, and there are a lot of things that I just can't explain, and I've stopped even trying to. But if you can come to peace with yourself and peace with others. I used to have a sign on my door, something like, we don't believe in absolute this or that, but we have a sense of mellow certainty. Mellow. You're not going to dump on other people. You're not going to say they're wrong. You're going to do more than tolerate them. I think some of you will remember in my talks, I was centrally involved in making the United States Air Force accept Wiccans on their air bases and give them space to worship. And you also are familiar with the fact that I ended up writing a book with a Mormon philosopher from Brigham Young University in dialogue of Christian theologians with Mormon thinkers. You talk about some people who are way apart on so many things, and we were able to talk. So I hope you're finding a faith of your own, and I hope you find peace with yourself, the divine and nature, and thank you for letting me share this with you. I hope to see you again. I think we're at the end of December, if I remember right. And amen.